Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we are very pleased you've joined us for our two-day Precious Metals and Critical Minerals Conference. The next presentation is from Defense Metals. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter at any time. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Mark Torrey, President and Chief Executive Officer of Defense Metals, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol DFMTF and on TSXV under the symbol DEFN. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you very much for that, and welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for this presentation. As Lily mentioned, I'm Mark Torrey, President CEO of Defense Metals. Been in this role for just over 18 months. I've been in resources for over 35 years, been in rare earths for over 12 years. So I've analysed many projects globally. And when I got a tap on the shoulder in 2024 from an international recruiter to see if I was interested in taking this role at Defense Metals, and I did my due diligence on it, it just stood out like a sore thumb in relation to the quality of the project. Which made me up my wife and my dog and move from Perth in Western Australia to Vancouver. And the project definitely hasn't disappointed since I've been here. Obviously, a general disclaimer first that we have to put out. So for Defense Metals, our key investment drivers are sitting here on the screen. And we feel like we're really uniquely positioned as a solution for the rare earth industry. We know that globally rare earth elements are indispensable in relation to everyday technologies, and we're looking here to be protecting North America from the supply vulnerability that we've seen over the past, probably 10 plus years, and which has been demonstrated to be a political and economic must. And the key thing, if you can take away from this presentation, we, as Defense Metals and Wichita, we're the only undeveloped REE mining reserve in North America. The only other reserve we know about is Mountain Pass, which is in operation. Just going back a little bit in relation to our path to value creation, basically started in the early 20s where the Wichita rare earth asset was acquired. During that time, we also signed a co-design agreement with McLeod Lake Indian Band, which is the major band up in the region where we are operating. We've completed a PFS, which demonstrates robust economics, and we've been continuing a lot of baseline environmental and social studies to support the permitting process that we need to go through. 26 and 27, we've been doing some drilling and obviously project work for the feasibility study. We've commenced and completed the beneficiation side of a 30-tonne pilot plant test work program. We're continuing on with our Indigenous engagement. We're obviously looking at potential offtakes and I'll go through strategic partnerships in a little bit. 2028 onwards, we're obviously looking at getting our permitting done, looking at the financing for construction, having a final investment decision with construction, and then obviously commencing production. So, we've obviously got a lot of work to do over the next few years. Going back a step, just in case people aren't aware of rare earths, they've obviously got critical technology applications. For us at Wichita, we mainly have neodymium and praseodymium, which is NdPr, and they go into permanent magnets. And those permanent magnets go into things like the automotive industry for electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, power generation for wind turbines, as well as aerospace and defence. It's obviously very important. And one of the big drivers we think moving forward is in the robotics and electronics industry. Other uses that rare earths have are obviously in chemicals and catalysts, healthcare, and agriculture as well. We know there's been geopolitical tension in relation to rare earths. China's done a very great job of, dominating all facets of the rare earth supply chain. And as you can see from this diagram here, as you move along the chain from reserves to mining to processing, etc., metal conversion and magnets, they just get more and more of the the percentage of the globally in relation to the supply chain. We know that it's recognised in the Western world. We know that that there are things being done in relation to trying to get more magnet production, which also needs obviously upstream production coming from companies like ourselves. It's been all over the news in relation to this geopolitical tension. With obviously China stopping exporting some critical minerals. And we've seen pricing in relation to that go up and down. One of the things that's obviously come out of this as well was the agreement that the US government had with MP Materials, which included a floor price for NdPr of $110 a kilo, which was really good for the industry. So we're sitting here. We know things need to be fixed, and I think there's a real push in the Western world, starting with the US and moving through Europe, to get all of this organised. I've analysed many rare earth projects globally, and the one thing that comes out of analysing projects is that the concentrate grade is extremely important. And the reason for that is when you have a look at it, whether like a 3 times lower concentrate grade requires a hydromet plant to be 3 times the size to get the same output. And obviously then when you're looking at a larger hydromet plant, you're looking at, obviously higher CapEx and higher OpEx. So when you have a look at this diagram that I've put together, you've got the same size beneficiation plant, and you've got a 15% TREO, which is total rare earth oxides, which is the grade in the concentrate, versus a 45% grade in concentrate. You can see the difference in size required at the hydromet size, at the hydromet stage, to get the same output of the TREO. So that's vital when you're looking at it, and we'll see on the next slide. When we're talking about Western producers in rare earths, you're talking about Lynas and Mountain Pass are the 2 major rare earth producers globally. And so when we look at our Wichita project up in British Columbia, the Wichita project itself goes from that 2.3% TREO in the ground to a 50% concentrate grade. And that puts us in the same leagues as your MP Materials, your Lynases, as well as the current Chinese producers that are there as well. And so that puts us in good stead to make sure that the project can be economic. So for us, for Defence Metals, what do we see as our strengths? We see ourselves as North America's premier rare earth deposit outside of MP Materials. As I've mentioned, it's high in neodymium and praseodymium, and it's located near Prince George, which is really close to existing infrastructure, which I'll go through shortly. And it's got a large proven reserve for a long mine life, and the high-grade rare earths, which we have at surface, with a very low strip ratio. Our PFS demonstrated that we had robust economics with very high operating margins. We had a NPV of 1.8 billion and a 24.6% IRR. And we got one of the highest operating margins for rare earth projects globally. We're continuing to look for strategic partnerships in relation to offtake, technical and financial. We've got an MOU with a strategic offtaker for our PFS production. Recently, we signed an MOU with Hanwha Ocean and Hanwha Corporation for potential offtake, technical and finance. And we're continuing to advance discussions with other potential strategic partners. We've got strong leadership, and I'll run through that in a separate slide. But if the one thing that you can walk away from this presentation, if you can just have in your minds that the Defence Metals is the only undeveloped reserve in North America of rare earths. And what this indicates that it's a robust project with lower risk, and it's reserve level projects that ultimately attract the project debt. So the infrastructure advantage, here's a map. So the Wichita project is 80 k's to the northeast of Prince George. Prince George is an existing mining town. The Wichita project itself is just off the highway and accessible through forestry service roads. It's close to rail. It's 100% owned by us. It has a power transmission in relation to hydroelectric power. And Prince George itself is a service and supply centre for natural resources. There's many mines around Prince George, and the port of Prince Rupert is only 500 kilometres to the west and is accessible by both rail and road. So I keep saying Mother Nature has blessed us by putting the deposit where it has. In relation to PFS, these are just some of the numbers that we had in we released last year. As I mentioned, the 1.8 billion NPV. There's a capex of 1.4 billion. The payback period is 3.7 years, which I think is really good. And the IRRs that you can see there. One of the big things that we have is the OPEX cost of around $38 a kilo US. Which puts us in the lowest quartile of cash costs, globally in relation to projects. On the right-hand side is a graph that was done by Argus, which demonstrates that our value of our basket after removing cerium and lanthanum is the highest of any project globally. So, as I mentioned previously, we have a strategy around strategic partners. We signed an MOU with a non-Chinese off-taker in 2025, and that was for PFS production, which our pre-feasibility study production was as a carbonate, which obviously then requires further separation and technical support. However, we are actually looking to produce a NdPr magnet grade oxide through our feasibility study, which will be starting shortly, which will mean we'll have potentially different offtake partners. We did sign an MOU very recently with Hanwha Ocean and Hanwha Corporation. They're one of the top 5 corporations in Korea. We did that in May 2026. And again, that's for the potential of investment, offtakes, as well as financial. And we're continuing to have a look at many other parties to look at potential offtakes, potential financial, and obviously technical support for us. So we're continuing to talk to many different parties in that regard. So leadership, again, it was one of the reasons I did move from Perth to here is that, we've got a very, very strong board. Guy Decellier is our executive chairman, based in Europe. He had over 20 years on the board of Solvay, which is obviously one of the major solvent extraction players in the Western world. And he's got a lot of links into the EU in high levels of government, as well as in the banking sector. Gone through my history. David Baker is our CFO. He worked with Ivanhoe Mines for over 20 years, did financing for Oyu Tolgoi. We've got Ali Madavi, who, again, he's our SVP of Corporate Development. He worked with NEO for nearly 20 years. Lots and lots of experience there. Dale Walstow's on our board. Dale, very well known in the Vancouver area in relation to, being a prospector and geologist in the region. Has got lots and lots of experience to add. Same with Louisa. She's been an analyst in rare earths for a number of years. Suzanne's looking at corporate governance and based in Washington, so having links into the US. Marianne joined the board recently. She's got a lot of experience with Hatch and in processing, design, etc. Very lucky to have Robin Jones have joined us from Perth as well. Robin and I worked together for 10 years at Northern Minerals, and we're probably two of the very few people in the Western world that can say that they've actually built and operated a rare earth processing facility. Michelle Tangway, very lucky to have her, VP Environment and Social Performance. Been in the industry for a long, long time, understands what needs to be done on the environmental side, and very good in relation to Indigenous relations, etc. And our flow sheet's really been done by John Good, who, when you talk to anyone in the rare earth industry, I mean, he's the guru in relation to rare earth processing. Again, I've mentioned it, and I want you to walk away with this. Wichita is the only undeveloped rare earth project in North America with that mineral reserve. I know it's hard to read this table even on my screen, but it just shows that, we're in line with MP Materials in relation to having the reserve. When you look at all the other projects that are in North America, yes, they've all got resources, but none of them have proven their economics to be able to demonstrate they can go into reserves. Our deposit itself is on the side of a hill. It's at surface, so very lucky in relation to the mining. Going to have a very, very low strip ratio of 3.3 to 1. And we've got slightly higher grades that we see, at surface for the first 7 or so years of our mine life, which means that it leads to a quicker payback for us. We got a big commitment to social performance. It's in my DNA. I want to bring the local communities along with us, along the journey. I think that's vitally important. We do, as I say here, we focus on that collaborative development and reconciliation. As I mentioned previously, we already have a strategic partnership with McLeod Lake with a co-design agreement. They've got an equity stake in the company, we establish those mutual beneficial relationships with the principal Indigenous right holder, but we're also, obviously starting our engagements with other communities up there, such as West Mobley and Sayke, etc. So, we're very committed to this, and we put a lot of time and effort into it. Again, it's the same thing with our environmental performance. We've got a huge commitment to making sure that we're doing the right things by the environment. We've been collecting data from 2020, and it revolves around things like hydrology, geochemistry, water quality, hydrogeology, meteorology. So, we're getting all of the right baseline information for us to assist us with the permitting processes. We align both the environmental and social baseline studies to include the engineering information required for the feasibility study and the environmental assessment stage. The government relations, got one of the big things when I first started here was to make sure I built some really good relations both with the federal government and the provincial government, and that's worked well for us. We've got the Mines Act permits in place for the work that we're doing on site. The BC government last year recognised Wichita as one of only 4 new promising projects for their advanced project timeline. What that means is that they're going to have assistance around the permitting process. It's not to cut corners or have not have local communities in the mix. It's purely to just try and see if we can do things at the same time and just get that permitting timeline as happening as quickly as possible. With the federal government, been building relationships there, been invited to a couple of delegations through Europe that I've done with the critical minerals over there. And we've got support from the federal government to date through CMIF grants, or the first mile, last mile fund that we're calling it now, of a total of about $2.7 million. And we're continuing those discussions and obviously continuing to look at getting further government support. So Wichita itself, we're looking to move towards starting the full feasibility study. We completed a spring program this year with 2 drill rigs. One was for some resource infill drilling to see if we can increase our mine life, which we're obviously hoping to get. They've got the cores actually in for analysis at the moment, and we're looking to try and get some results out from that over the next month or 2. And also we had 1 drill up there for geotechnical drilling for the feasibility study. And this followed the winter program where we had drill rig out there for the geotech drilling as well. We continue our ongoing baseline environmental programs, and we continue studies in relation to the hydromet, in relation to sizing and location and other optimization work. We started a 30-ton pilot plant, which we did at SGS Lakefield. That was completed just recently. It ran for about 6 weeks, and that was for the beneficiation side to give us product to be able to put into a hydromet pilot plant, which we'll be doing in the next couple of months. And the results that we're going to get from those will be obviously utilised in our full feasibility study. So in relation to our existing capital structure, yes, we've got 395 million shares outstanding, and so obviously purchase warrants and options that are outstanding there. We do have 7% management and insider ownership. Our executive chairman, Guy Decellier, owns over 5% of the company, and we got a strong, debt-free balance sheet with currently with 6.5 million in cash sitting in there. We got coverage here from Paradigm and Agentis. Again, so just to go back over the front, with our key investment drivers, we see ourselves uniquely positioned as a solution to the rare earth industry, and we look at ourselves, protecting North America from that supplier vulnerability. And remember, we're the only undeveloped RE mining reserve in North America. Thank you for listening. We've got some questions, which I will try and go through quickly. Got a question, is there potential for optimization work on recoveries, reagents use, or plants designed to further enhance? The answer to that, yes. We've been working on that. That's part of this 30-ton pilot plant test work that we've done, and we're going to have more of a look at that through the hydromet side as well. Got beyond Hanwha and the existing non-Chinese off-taker, how many other serious strategic conversations having? I can just say multiple. More than a handful is probably the best way to answer that one. We've got, with a high-grade concentrate and smaller downstream hydromet footprint, how material is your environmental advantage versus lower-grade peers? Look, whether it's big or small, I mean, you've still got environmental, performance that you need to adhere to, and for us, we just make sure that we certainly will do that. And as I said, it's a key driver for us to make sure that this project gets up and running. Are you seeing increased inbound interest from Western OEMs or magnet manufacturers now that the project is recognised as a leading ex-China rare earth asset? Short answer is very much so. Obviously can't elaborate in relation to detail, but we're definitely seeing a lot more interest, especially over the last 12 to 18 months. Just running through these questions. Are you planning to finance the development of the mine or looking for a senior partner? Obviously, we'll have a look at any options that are out there, but certainly my coming over here was to look at building the project and getting it up into operation. It's a matter of obviously being a smaller company. How do we go about doing the financing for a construction for an operation that size? And that's going to require support from government or a major strategic partner to help us do that. Any idea when you'd expect results from the recent flotation test program? Yes, I think I said that. So we're planning to look at results coming out from that over the next month or two. got here, you've added veterans like David Baker, Robin Jones and John Good. What does that built mines before bench strength allow you to do that typical juniors can't? Well, it obviously gives you the experience in relation to people that have come on board, that have been there, that have done it, understand the pitfalls in relation to building projects. And we get someone like John Good on board who, is world renowned in relation to his understanding of hydromet and separation technologies to build your flow sheets. I think that's extremely important. That you've got to have the right people who know what they're doing in place to make sure that the project's successful. What do you see as the next catalyst to help with share price? We've been saying this for a little while. Our next catalyst is going to be, an announcement around, a strategic partner. And when I look at strategic partners, I look at it, as government or private. And as I've mentioned previously, that revolves around, a number of things, being offtake, being financial support, or being technical support. And I think the next catalyst is going to be an announcement around something around those lines, which obviously I can't talk about in too much depth. What gives you the most confidence that Wichita can keep advancing towards DFS on schedule? It's the quality of the project and the quality of the team. Without the two of those, and I think that I wouldn't have the confidence in moving towards a DFS at all. But also, you have confidence, in hearing from government and other parties in relation to, the quality of the Wichita project, and that the understanding that it does need support from a couple of different areas. So we're expecting to get that support, over the next 6 months or so. The Hanwha Ocean Hanwha Corporation MOU looks like a serious strategic step. What does a full offtake plus potential equity investment from Hanwha do to your funding timeline? Well, it's potentially it's part of a whole process. Obviously, we're not relying on one or two strategic partners. We're talking to a number, as I've mentioned previously. Yes, it's a great step. We're in contact with them, as early as this morning. We're definitely moving this forward. In relation to impact on the timeline, I mean, it just helps us in relation to making sure that we continue along the timeline that we have out here. Obviously, any issues around funding is going to impact the funding, impact the timeline itself. Infrastructure looks exceptional with road, access, power, gas, rail, port. How much time and capex do you think this shaves off versus a comparable greenfield project? That's a very good question. Look, I've been involved in resources for over 35 years, and it's one of those things that, I was just really happy that I finally found a project that is close to infrastructure. Most of the projects I've been involved with are very remote, and you require a lot of capital infrastructure just to even get you there. So, I think it shaves quite a bit of time off it in relation to it being close to that infrastructure. Where does the 1.88 million infrastructure funding fit into the broader permitting and development timeline? Well, it's assisting us with looking at power and where the power line might be going and access to that. So it's all part of the full development timeline that we actually do have. That's where we're sitting there. Look, unfortunately, we're running out of time. Did have a few more questions that were in here. So, look, if anybody does have any further questions or want to get to me directly, my details are up on screen there in relation to my email, etc. Feel free to contact us directly. But I really thank you for your time and hope you've learned a lot more about defence in Wichita.